Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on the lands, legends, planes, and planeswalkers of Magic the Gathering, where I introduce you to these various places and people that exist within the world of Magic the Gathering, to help giving a little bit more flavor to everything that exists there. Today I'm introducing you to one that was originally a legend and became a planeswalker, Teferi of Zhalfir. Now, Teferi is a human that, of course, was born in Zhalfir and Jamora. He was, for a time period, a planeswalker. Now, when he was born, he was basically a prankster in his youth, but had great magical potential, so he was eventually set to the Academy of Tolarian. Now, Tolarian Academy was one that was founded by the planeswalker Urza in order to teach students, basically, magical aptitude, with the hopes that they can eventually help battle against Phyrexia. Now, Teferi got off on a real bad start with a lot of the people that he would become great friends with over the ages. Karn the Golem, Jehoira, Baron. He, with being a prankster, got off to such a terrible start. Now, what had happened at a certain point in time in the teaching was there was an attack of Phyrexia, where Joyra and Teferi were both killed. Urza decided to send Karn back in time in order to stop this, testing out a bit of experimental gear he had. Karn managed to stop the Phyrexian attack, but unfortunately the device that was used overheated and caused a massive explosion, killing many and causing a temporal warp. The temporal warp basically put Teferi in this area of time where it was slow. Joyra, in fact, kind of went into sort of a coma for a while, and other than that, Karn and Urza did begin to rebuild the Academy. Joyra eventually, after a certain point in time, basically discovered where Teferi was, and the first thing that she did is throw him a wet blanket. It took it 5 years for it to reach him. So he was on fire at the point in time, for 5 years. Joyra went into a coma for 10 years, and upon waking up, he began to actually realize, she began to realize what was going on. She actually figured out a way to save Teferi, using Urza and Karn because they were resistant to the time bubble that he effectively was stopped in. They managed to rescue him, but Teferi was kind of defeated. He had lost 20 years in that bubble. 20 years. Many of his friends died during that explosion, and even so, a lot of the people he knew had aged 20 years. Joyra, who'd sort of been his good friend, had aged 20 years. She was already older than him. Now she was much older. Now, some years later, he went to Urza and basically told him that he was going to go with Joyra to Shiv, her homeland, in order to help process and create power stones to power the artifacts that Urza needed in his battle against Phyrexia. Along the way, the two of them developed romantic feelings from each other. Unfortunately, we're not sure how the relationship continued to evolve or anything, because there was a time period that things kept changing. Teferi assisted in the battle of Sarah's realm. He then became the Royal Mage of Zhalfir. It was a new honor that had been bestowed upon him. And with this new honor, he began to become concerned with his homeland and his continent. He became a protectorate of it. He managed to convince Jor-El to return from the wilderness to human society and help protect civilization again. This was a great deal. Sometime after then, his planeswalker spark ignited. We're not sure how exactly it happened, but he began traveling the plains, and in order to protect his homeland of Zhalfir, he set up these guilds to look after it. Unfortunately, a side effect of these guilds was a complication between one of them, the Shadow Guild, and this religious organization, the Fairmouth, began to cause a civil war in the country itself. So by the time he returned, civil war was breaking out between the South and the North. There was invaders from another country coming in. Things were just really bad in his home country, and he tried to help fix it and help things because he set up things with these guilds, and he managed to find a member of the royal family. She was put in power. Unfortunately, she only managed to sort of quiet things down. She didn't unite the country. And so things were just still bad in Zhalfir. So he wiped his hands of it and went to the Chala Islands to practice his time magic, which he did many experiments over the years. His experiments saw small results, but the unfortunate results were strange time rifts that were beginning to form around the area. He attempted to inject mana in order to solve it. And the result was even more unfortunate, as it caused the entire island, everything living on it, plants, animals, people, to phase out of time. Eventually the island would return, But time had passed, and they learned that time had passed. Apparently, in the interim, the experiment had attracted 3 wizards. Magnara, who just wanted to look into it, Jor-El, the friend he had made, and Karavek, a very evil wizard who wanted to use his abilities to his maximum. Karavek convinced Jor-El to join with him in war against the other Natures, and Magnara joined with the other Natures. When Teferi sort of returned, he found that he wasn't very easily able to interfere, so he would send like visions and magical help as best he can. Eventually his friend Jor-El turned against Karavek and joined with the other side, allowing for his defeat and eventual banishment, effectively saving the nation and from the war that had been occurring across the continent, the basic little massive war of Jamora. So the Mirage War was effectively his fault. He was really guilty about this, and it worked upon him, and hence that's why he did his best to sort of stop what was going on. He did become a recluse this time, though we do know he was involved in the Planeswalker War, which little information has actually been revealed about this. We know there was a big war of Planeswalkers that took place before the Phyrexian invasion. What actually happened there? We're not 100% sure. Again, information is sparse about this entire conflict that he did get involved in. When the Phyrexian War began, he decided he didn't really want to help Urza anymore. He came up with a plan. He tricked Urza into using the portals above Zhalfir in order to fuel his magic. Effectively then, he figured out a way to phase out most of northern Jamora and parts of Shiv. And he did. He phased them out of time. He took them away, and Urza tried to plead with him to keep these important heroes that would help defeat Phyrexia away, but it was too late, and they disappeared. 100 years later, when the god Corona was born, and she was sort of searching the multiverse for connections with similar beings of her own, she actually managed to reach out to Teferi and communicate with him, and he saw that the Phyrexian had been defeated and time had changed. It was another 200 years before they emerged back into the world, where the rest of northern Jamora and Shiv returned to Domaniria. So now those 2 countries, and Joyra and Teferi, had returned to the world after all this time, and they found it ravaged of mana, that there was very little mana left in Domaniria thanks to what had happened with Corona, that the land was just not great after a couple major apocalypses in 300 years. Now, when the Time Rifts began, he joined with the half-Keld Rathda and Venser from Urborg, the student of Tolarian, and the 3 of them journeyed to sort of undo what was going on with these Time Rifts. After losing a battle with Nicol Bolas, he finally decided to give up his Planeswalker Spark to seal the rift above Shiv, finally stabilizing this land after coming back and being affected by a Time Rift. It was finally returned to normal, and Joyra, his lover's land, was returned to normal. Little is known what has happened after this, if he would have regained his Planeswalker Spark with what had happened in changing the nature of Planeswalkers, or if he was just immortal, which, with the magic of the Tolarians, those mortals live very long lives. He could still either be alive or have passed away by now. It is unknown. Now, he has been depicted in both his legendary card format and a Planeswalker format. So you can find him in both of those forms, back as him as the Mage of Zhalfir and as the Planeswalker Extraordinaire that has very powerful temporal powers. So, that's it for today. I introduced you to Teferi, an amazing character that has had a lot of influence on a number of sets. He had major influence on the Mirage block, causing the Mirage War. He, in fact, had a major influence on the war against the Phyrexians in the invasion. And he was integral in the Time Spiral set in undoing what was there, as being one of the major players there. So he's appeared many times, and each of his times he has shown that he is powerful and been worthy of being called a Planeswalker that wishes to protect his homeland. So, if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just for the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. If you want to check out some more Magic the Gathering videos in the interim, in between my own, I do recommend my Friends of the Multiverse, Card Bazaar, They Said We Said, and Tasty Snackies. They do some great Magic the Gathering videos if you want to check those out. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.